share my screen. And let me say that Pat and I have been wrestling with the technology in preparation for this meeting. So just cross your fingers every time we have to do something, and we will all be fine. So let me go ahead and share screen and get started here. And let me say something about 2024. And what I'd like to do for 2024 is just review the key dates. And I have to say that I almost, at the top of this list of key dates, put January 6th, because I think January 6th is the day that puts all election dates in 2024 into perspective. I expect that this year, the elections of this year are going to be the most important elections of our lifetimes. I think none of us is in denial about what's at stake. To me, this election is even a graver election than 2016. I think in 2016, the GOP didn't intend to win, and they weren't ready, and they didn't know what the heck to do when they got in there. And I think now they know exactly what to do when they get in there, and they are prepared to do it. And that, to me, is stunningly sober. So it is a very big year. And let me describe the key dates. And I'm not getting into a tremendous amount of detail with these dates, because what I'd love is for all of us to hold the general trajectory in our heads, right? There are going to be other runoffs. I'm not putting all of early voting in there. There are a couple of special elections, but these are the key dates that we really need to be thinking about. The legislative session begins tomorrow. It will last for 40 working days, so we don't know exactly when it's going to end. We expect that it will wind up in late March, early April. This legislative session is going to be on fire in not terrific ways, because we are expecting that the GOP are going to be bringing out all their culturally divisive issues in order to whip up their base. So legislative session from tomorrow through roughly late March, early April. Candidate qualifying week. Will be March 4th to March 8th. That'll be the week when candidates qualify both for the state level, in terms of state House, state Senate, and also for the county level. The presidential primary is March 12th. Early voting for that begins February 19th. I want to remind folks that the presidential primary happens on a different date than the primary for state and county races. Okay, for state races. So the presidential primary is March 12th, early voting February 19th. And then on May 21, two things happen as part of the elections on that day. The general primary, which means the primary for those running for state house and state senate. And also on that day are the nonpartisan elections, most of which are county level. So things like county school board, county commissioner, those also happen that day. And then we work like dogs until November 5th. And that's the day of the general election. And the one runoff that I have included is December 3rd. So that's what our year looks like. We will be reminding folks of this. It is all starting quickly. And with that in mind, let me say something about the agenda. And before I go into the agenda, I want to repeat what
I'm going to put this lower, Mike.
I want to repeat what PJ had asked us. There have been a lot of people that have joined since I've been talking. If you have recently joined, please mute yourself. And if you're new, please put your name and email in the chat.
About Georgia elections and stuff for this year.
So let me just mute people. Thank you. The agenda, given what we have been talking about for 2024, and given how sober a year that is, and given all of that looks like, the meeting today is really going to be both about the landscape for the year and also about what Necessary Trouble is going to be working on this year, candidates we're going to be supporting. For starters, we are going to be hearing from Teddy Smyth, who is the executive director of the House Democratic Caucus, giving us that kind of landscape of the State House for the year. We are then going to together be voting on the Georgia House candidates for Necessary Trouble to support this year. We have a couple of troubler calls to action for things related to the election that need to start immediately. And then we will hear updates on other troubler work underway. And with that, PJ, I am going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky. Now I would like to introduce or bring forth Karen Davenport, and Karen is going to introduce our main speaker. Karen?
Thank you so much, PJ. I am excited today that we have with us Teddy Smyth, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Teddy is the executive director of the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. He previously worked on the Biden campaign in 2020, leading the Get Out the Vote efforts across the South. He is from Augusta, Georgia, and lives there with his partner, Tova, in East Atlanta Village. Well, I'm sorry. He's from Augusta, Georgia, and he currently lives in East Atlanta Village with his partner, Tova. And he just adopted a cat, for those of you who are cat lovers. So excited that Teddy is joining us today, and I am going to turn it over to him. Teddy?
Hey, Karen, thank you for the generous introduction. Great to see you. Becky, great to see you as well. And thank you for having me on the call today. As Karen mentioned, just this morning, Tova and I picked up a third family member for our household, an adorable, beautiful cat named Calvin. So right now he's sort of adjusting to the house, but perhaps if I join on a future meeting, he'll make a little appearance. I'll do my best to share my screen and then run through some slides and answer some questions. But give me half a second here while I click present. Takes its time. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, let's dive into it because I put probably a few too many slides, so I'll zip through and try to dwell on the ones that are most important. And again, happy to answer questions at the end. Teddy with Caucus, good to see you. I've joined it before. Great to see y'all again. And I'm so excited about the program that we're building this year. I work for House Minority Leader James Beverly for Macon, as well as the leadership team, which is Park Cannon, Sam Park, Shay Roberts, Karen Bennett, and Sandra Scott. I think I named everybody, but that's the leadership team. And then we have 78 members who represent all of you from every corner of the state. So things I'm going to talk about, a little update coming out of redistricting, our new target map, a discussion of some of the candidates who we've recruited so far and the path forward on candidate recruitment, a look ahead about what our general program for taking the majority looks like, a brief mention of commit to vote cards because it's a part of the program that I'm very excited about and I think y'all will be able to be a part of. And then obviously legislative session starts tomorrow. So there's a little bit to say there. Reapportionment. So we just went through redistricting. You might have followed the news, but back in October, Judge Jones ruled that the current House, Senate, congressional maps were illegal racial gerrymanders. They violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights. They disenfranchised Black voters in Georgia. And he issued a decision that had a very specific remedy. He said you've got to have 5 more House seats, 2 more Senate seats, I believe, and 1 more congressional seat that are majority Black seats that are more than 50% African American. And we convened, the Republicans and the Democrats convened. The Democrats put forward a pretty good map, a map that would have been fair, that wasn't unnecessarily racially or politically gerrymandered, a map that we could have simply passed. And the Republicans took it and just ripped it up, threw it out the window. It totally ignored the works the Democrats did. I can't say honestly they took any Democratic input into the map they finally passed. They passed partisan remedial maps. We really thought that these were still illegal. A couple notable things they did that could still result in future court challenge. They removed coalition districts. So a coalition district, I'm sorry to talk fast here, but a coalition district is when a group of minority voters, or a crossover district when Black voters join some white voters to elect a candidate of choice. Think of like many of the Gwinnett districts that are super diverse. There's no single racial group that is the majority there. And they typically elect Democrats, but they elect the people who best represent all of us together working in coalition. The Republican maps erased a bunch of those. Notably on the congressional maps, Lucy McBath's district, poof, gone, which I think is really a travesty and arguably illegal. Arguably, coalition districts are protected by the Voting Rights Act. Judge Jones ruled in late December. He didn't agree. He said, in the court case, we just talked about majority Black districts. You did, in fact, add on paper 5 additional majority Black House districts. These maps pass muster. We will move forward with them. So as far as the court goes, the map is set for now. There's a couple challenges still moving. There will be additional appeals on both sides. But for 2024, we expect these are, in fact, the maps. I'll skip over this, but in the plaintiff's challenge to his decision, there's huge areas of the state where previously the judge ruled Black voters are disenfranchised, and the Republican map did nothing to give those specific voters a remedy, which I think is technically illegal, but he disagreed. During reapportionment, during redistricting, the caucus tried to amplify our message online. We'll do this during regular session as well. And so I invite you to follow us at Georgia House Democrats. We're on Twitter, now X. Hopefully we'll be on Threads soon, Instagram, TikTok, but especially video content. I mean, members like Leader Beverly, like Sam Park, like Ken Alexander, Teddy Reese, others, just deliver firebrand speeches in the well that I think really deliver the Democratic response to the Republican nonsense that is going on. And so we're trying to lift their voices up, get them as much attention as possible, because I think when people hear the facts, when people hear them speak, they are persuaded. Our path to majority this year, the reason we're here, we need to take power in the House, in the Senate, and the governor's chamber to change what's possible for so many Georgians. Right now, we're at 78 seats. They have 102. This does not count Representative Nisha Maynor, you might recall, who switched parties. She's in West Atlanta, near Clark, Atlanta, and we fully expect her to lose. So technically, this is really, we have 79 seats. That means we need 12 more seats to take the majority. In the new map, they paired a couple sets of incumbents. Sam Park and Greg Kennard out in Gwinnett, which is the map that's shown here, were paired. Greg Kennard has decided not to run, so Sam is moving forward, but this is like really a bummer. Greg Kennard has been like an absolute advocate for the people of Georgia. He's a pastor, he's a nonprofit leader. He's just like a good person. Gone because of the vagaries of redistricting. Similar situation in Cobb County. Terry Anolwitz and Doug Stoner were drawn together. Doug is not running, Terry's running. They reached an agreement. Major props to Greg and Doug, honestly, for being the bigger person in this moment and saying, I respect Sam and Terry, who are legacy electeds who have been leading and fighting for so long. And then last heartbreaker, Syra Draper and Becky Evans have been drawn together in DeKalb and are both planning to run. They're both friendly, they're both friends. I'm friends with all of them. Like this, it's in good spirit, but both have good reasons that they want to keep fighting. So they are running in HD 90, I believe. I mentioned the 5 additional majority Black districts, 2 in Macon-Bibb, 1 in Douglas County, and then 2, if I move my screen, in Henry County. These are all strongly Democratic leaning open seats. And so candidate recruitment will be a little bit of a conversation, but we expect a bunch of people to step up and run. These are maps of, on the right is the new Henry County seats, just so you can see it's sort of from Locust Grove up to McDonough. Notably, Lauren Daniel was an HD 117. She is no longer. There was this guy, Demetrius Rucker, who ran last time. He is now actually in that 81 Lauren Daniel seat. So we don't have anybody in 117 yet, though I expect we will. 74 is around Hampton, also. Henry headed over to Douglas County, I believe. And then 64, sorry, is Douglas County out towards Mableton, a little bit beyond. This is my worst slide, but it's also the most important. So I apologize for the density of information. On the left, you'll see seat count. Oh no, why is it not sequential anymore? Ignore 84, it's mostly sequential. But from 78 on, the seat count lists the number of seats we hold. So as I mentioned, right now we're at 79. That includes Jasmine Clark, who's a little bit lower, and Farouk McGall, who are a little bit lower. If we win, if we protect all of our incumbents, we hold it at 79. If we protect all of our incumbents up to Patty Bentley, and this is listed in order of difficulty to win, I think, we have 77 seats. There's no guarantee that Jasmine Clark and Farouk McGall are coming back. They're going to have to work really hard, and we're going to have to work really hard for them. So let's say Patty Bentley wins. We pick up one more seat, the next hardest seat. Susie Greenberg is running against Deborah Silcox. I'll talk a little bit more about her. But Susie wins, we're at 78 seats. One of those new seats, 79, is down in Macon. Tangi Herring's running there. There's a couple other people who will probably run there. We won that seat, we're at 79. Gerald Green, this seat is so hard, our 80th seat on the board. He's a Republican. It's a majority Black, 54.8% Black district, 42% white district. Biden won it with 54% of the vote, 54% of the vote. But Gerald Green has proven himself to be unbelievably sticky, really, really hard to unseat. I think we can spend a lot of money, to be honest, recruit a really good candidate, and deliver a message about how Gerald Green has failed and failed and failed the people of Albany. But easier said than done. He's been elected for a very long time. Jasmine Clark, I mentioned, she's great. We've got to protect her. Matt Reeves, 99, you will recall Amdegal, perhaps, who ran in this seat last time, Gwinnett. Amdegal has said he is not running, as far as I can tell, and keep this within the confines of the call today. Don't tweet it out, at least, because the final details are coming together. But Michelle Kang has convinced Amdegal to endorse him. He's planning to launch her campaign next week. I'll talk a little bit more about her. But this is big, big news, because if there was a competitive primary, we'd have to wait. It would be a whole rigmarole. Having a single candidate who's strong, who's a killer, who's a fighter like Michelle Kang is really, really good for Democrats, and I think gives us the chance to unseat Matt Reeves. Seat number 83. So let's say we win all of these, we get up to 83 seats. Scott Hilton. Mary Robichaux was unseated by Scott Hilton last cycle. Laura Marvarshian, I'll talk a little bit more about, but she's planning to run and has a good shot of winning. And then Farouk McGall, they made his seat 4% more Republican, which he won by like 50.5% of the vote, like just barely by I don't know, a couple hundred votes, a thousand votes maybe. I forget the exact number, but he won by a narrow margin. They've erased that margin. He has to work 5 times as hard to win here. And then I'm not going to dwell on these because there are second tier targets, but to get to 90 to the majority, we need to unseat Mike Chokas, Chuck Martin, Sharon Cooper, Marcus Witter, and Don Parsons. We have a couple good candidates here. Eric Castader is running against Sharon Cooper in Cobb County, and Danielle Bell is running against Don Parsons. She's a young person, she's a leader, she's dynamic. I'm excited about her. She has a tougher road ahead, but is a really, really good candidate. Okay, I do want to mention or introduce you, if you haven't met her yet, to Michelle Kang. She's a prominent activist in Gwinnett County. She's a realtor. She's a first-generation Korean American. She was on the board of the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. So she's shown some leadership in business development. in Gwinnett and housing development in Gwinnett. And she's been on calls like this. She's an organizer. She got her start working to elect Warnock, working to elect Stacey Abrams, working with partners like AAAF, the Asian American Advocacy Fund. She's a real leader, and I think she has the fight in her, the drive in her. She really wants to win. And we talk a lot about like what makes a winning candidate, like what do you have to do as a candidate to win in a tough fight? And I keep using the word fight. Sorry, I don't mean to make this use as much war lingo. I'm a bit of a pacifist here, but she has so much spunk in her. And one of the things that determines who wins is who raises more money, which is a little bit how hard you work, and in particular, how many doors you personally knock and your supporters knock. Because one-on-one conversations, people remember that. Michelle Kane comes to your door, you meet her, people remember that. So that starts now. Susie Greenberg, hopefully you've heard about her or met her or seen her, but she is a dynamo, attorney, small business owner, community advocate. You can see her website at susiegreenberg.com. She's had a tremendously successful launch, and I'm just very excited to support her. She lives like 3 blocks away from Deborah Silcox, the terrible incumbent she's trying to unseat, and they're sort of similar. Like they're prominent, like attorneys. You know, they're moms who went to similar schools, similar daycares, et cetera. Like they have a lot in common, which I think means Susie can erode a lot of Deborah Silcox's support. Silcox was able to win time and time again because people said, "Oh, she's nice. She's a neighbor. I know her." Susie benefits in the same way, and obviously she wins on the issues. And then the third and last candidate I'll introduce you to, if you haven't met her yet, is Laura Marvarshian. She's planning to run an HD 53. And apologies, my slide's a little short here. She hasn't rolled out her launch materials, but she's an experienced business professional, community leader, arts advocate. Notably, she's on the board of the Woodruff Arts Foundation, as well as Galeo, which is an organization that works to elect Latino leaders across Georgia. And she lives HD 48, Mary Robichaud's district. It's like this series of country clubs going from sort of just the edge of Gwinnett through North Fulton. Laura lives in the country club of the South, which I think is indicative of some of these country clubs up there. She's perfect. She's really, really smart. I'm excited for y'all to get to know her a little bit. But together we can flip that. I'm sensitive of time. I do have a few more things to go through, but how am I doing on timing here?
You are doing fine, Teddy. Keep going. You
Okay.
have about 15, 20 more minutes. 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I can take a little bit less than that, but I appreciate it. Great. I want to talk about this strategy. Okay, so I talked about redistricting. There's our seats. Here's like the people we got to elect a little bit. There's a lot more that need to meet, but I wanted to just give you a little taste of a couple of the top targets. But how overall, as a team, and I count you all among the team, do we flip the House? How do we win and flip 12 or 13 seats? First, we got to recruit really good candidates. That's what we've been working really hard. We've been working in partnership with Necessary Trouble. Big shout out to Pam Woodley on this, among others, who's been doing tremendous work recruiting candidates, not just in these target seats, but in every single seat. It is so important that Democrats, no matter where they are in Georgia, can show up to the ballot box and vote for a Democrat. It's a sense of pride. Like if you've worked with or been a Democrat in a rural or red-leaning space, like to be able to vote for a Democrat, to be able to know that you're not alone in your beliefs and seeing that insanity that's going on with the Republican Party is so important. So candidate recruitment, top goal, so important for the caucus and for all of us. Second, the Republicans have infinite money. I have a slide in here that has however much Governor Kemp has, but Kemp doesn't have anything else going on. He can just raise and spend unlimited funds and just spend it on state house, state senate seats. Why would he spend it on anything else? He doesn't have a governor's race. He's a term limited or whatever. He doesn't have to run anymore. So he's going to dump money against Susie Greenberg, against Laura Marvarshian. Can we compete with that? Not quite. We have the benefit of the power of the people among us, but we've got to try. And so the caucus is trying to raise up to 5 million. So, but we'll see how close we can get. We're a big team, and we've got to keep growing that team. And I'm excited to be here on the call to invite y'all yet again to be a part of this collective team that's going to take the majority. Caucus members are on board. We have 78 members who are supercharged organizers, leaders themselves, partners, obviously Necessary Trouble, Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, many others who are on board to go all in for state house candidates. Donors giving money's a great way to participate, and writ large Democrats, including the party. If you haven't met Evan, who's the new party ED, I'm really excited and confident in his leadership, and I think he's really going to be able to do a lot of good from the party side. Researching is an important aspect. We'll do more of this, and I'll have more info to share as the cycle develops. But some messages convince swing voters more than others. You probably know this if you talk to your neighbors about, like, if you start getting all jargony, it's like, what are you talking about? But if you talk like a normal person, it is so much more compelling. And so testing some of those messages, figuring out what issues are most important to people is a key goal of the cycle. And then being really consistent with that messaging and telling stories, human stories, can make a big difference in how people change their minds. I'm going to skip through this, but we are on the caucus side doing a lot of work to refine our message this cycle. So more to come on this. Unfortunately, our communication director, you might have met her. She was a gem. Ashley Thurston has just wrapped up her time with the caucus. She's moved on to other things, but we're hiring Meredith Brasher over session. Meredith was the comms director for Raphael Warnock and is also a gem of a person. You'll meet her, but more to come on the messaging front. Same thing on this side. Standards. So this is new for the caucus this year. In the past, I think we've had a lot of implicit expectations for candidates where we've said, like, this is the best way to win your race. You're like, this is, but it's been a little bit piecemeal. This cycle, we are really trying to be transparent and upfront in communicating our expectations for targeted candidates. A caucus candidate is a candidate that the caucus, our PAC, et cetera, will invest in up to $100,000 to $200,000 through mostly paid media field staff. And so we're trying to have that conversation early with candidates and set the bar really high. And it'll change and it'll be a conversation, but y'all might notice or might hear that we're setting higher standards. That includes higher fundraising goals, both for us and for candidates. A lot of fundraising is call time, how many hours you're spending as a candidate, just calling people up. It's a grind. I wish we had publicly financed elections because, like, why do we have to spend money on this? Or sorry, spend time on this? Why shouldn't we just be talking to voters? But right now it's part of the puzzle and part of how you win. Voter contact, canvassing. A big shout out to Necessary Trouble for all of the tremendous canvassing I know and saw it make a difference last cycle. This will be a top focus as well. And then building professionalized operations. This looks like having a nice glossy website, like having a full-time campaign manager, using opposition research in a strategic way about the person you're running against and what bills, et cetera, they've supported. In turn, the caucus plans to invest in top targeted races. Leader Beverly plans to invest in top targeted races anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000. If you followed the Virginia 2023 elections, where Virginia took back the majority in the House and took a solid majority in the Senate, or held the majority and took the governorship, those state house races in Virginia cost anywhere from, on each side, like $1 million to $1.2 million. To be clear, this is absurd. This is like absolutely 2024 absurdism. Nothing should cost that much. It's not even just inflation, it's like an arms race. It's ridiculous. And so I want to be clear about that. Like, why are we spending this much money when that money could go to so many other good things? But very real decisions hinge on who wins these seats. And as we get closer and closer to the majority, every single seat will mean the difference between Medicaid being expanded, 500,000 people having access to healthcare, not like, healthcare, like for 500,000 people, probably is worth $1 million in one seat. Again, it's ridiculous, but it means you can pull every single possible lever, including TV. If one thing on TV, if one candidate goes up on TV and the other candidate doesn't, that's like a slam dunk. for either candidate. It gets really, really expensive, especially in the Atlanta media market. My hope is we don't have to deal with that. It is wildly inefficient. You show a TV ad to, all of Atlanta for a state house seat that's like this little corner. Again, it is also a little bit absurdist, but if you can truly spend a lot of money on TV, it can make a difference. I prefer, and we will probably only spend on targeted digital TV, people who watch on Hulu or on YouTube. So you can target it a little bit, be a little bit more efficient with your money, and cable buys, where you can also be a little bit more geographically specific in your targeting. I'm not making a fundraising pitch today, but just so y'all know, members are very, very invested, and leadership is very, very invested in this. It takes all of us and all of our fundraising, but particularly from the member side to invest in these races. And we're trying to scale up our program in a big way to compete with Republicans. What does that look like? Okay, here's the slide I mentioned earlier. Governor Kemp has 3.7 million. Again, these numbers are inconceivable to me. I have trouble thinking about, the wealth of these days, and you think about billionaires and the pile of money they have, yada, yada. But money is unbelievably unequal right now. And that plays out in campaign finance too. Kemp will take that 3.7 million, spend it on 5, 6, 7 seats. How much is that? Like $500,000 just from him? Those candidates will raise and spend too. This is going to be our mountain to climb to compete against. But we've done a little bit. Last cycle, we grew the program from what used to be about $1 million a cycle to 2.5 million a cycle. Leadership's been in place for a year and a half here, and I've been in this job for 2 years now, and slowly, we are growing. On social, on email. If you're not on our email list, go to Georgia House Dems. Georgia House Democrats, what is our website? GAHouseDems.com. I'll put it in the chat, but sign up for our emails if you can. Yeah, we're trying to raise a little bit more. One quick note on how we do it mechanically. Republicans passed this terrible campaign finance law that enabled governors, the lieutenant governors, and candidates, and the caucuses, House and Senate, to form leadership committees. These leadership committees can raise and spend unlimited funds with no limits whatsoever. Again, it takes the cap off of spending, but it does mean we can raise and coordinate that spending with candidates. And then I'm almost done here, I believe, but just a quick note on programs. Super important to us this year, recruiting candidates, driving press coverage of things that Democrats, candidates, members, leadership are doing, organizing, getting out those doors, knocking on those doors, hiring campaign managers. The caucus will partner with candidates to hire managers directly, and then advertising, paid media, which is the mail, the digital ads, the TV ads, the digital TV ads, the radio, etc. Last cycle, we ran a $200,000 program for multicultural media in particular. This was mostly Black radio. It was a little bit of Latino radio, and then it was streaming Black, Latino, and Korean American, I believe, but Asian American streaming radio in our targeted districts. This was awesome. Like, this was a really, really good program, and we'll do it again because especially voters of color are so used to like an organizer showing up at the end of the cycle and saying, hey, can we have your vote? Versus getting meaningful, culturally competent communications early, starting in the summer. And so we have a great team working on it. Sharon Pays ran this program last cycle. We'll do this again, but it's part of our advertising that we've got to be smart about how we reach voters of color in particular. Great. Last thing before session, and then I'll wrap. Submit to vote cards. This is an aspect of the program I am so excited about this cycle. It makes such a difference. In 2017, I was working for a candidate, Jennifer Carroll Foy, in Virginia. And she had everything. Virginia has no campaign finance law, so we were doing every aspect of the program. We had plenty of money. But the part of the campaign that I think made the biggest difference is from the summer, we had these little postcards, mail cards. And everywhere she went and everywhere we went as organizers, we would ask people, hey, will you commit to vote for Jennifer Carroll Foy? On that card, and I don't have an exact example, but this sort of gives you a sense, and we'll have a template for candidates. We've asked people, say, hey, will you commit to vote for Jennifer? They would say yes, check their name, write any issues, and sign their name. There's not much in campaigns, and again, maybe I'm a pessimist about this, but there's only a few things in campaigns that make a difference. There's a lot of noise, a lot of money, but relatively little that makes a difference in how people actually act at the end of the day. It's very hard to affect how people act. Candidate doors and canvassing definitely makes a difference. TV ads, if you don't respond, makes a difference. Direct mail, delivering a persuasive message through direct mail. The Analyst Institute runs testing. It has like a 2 or 3 or 4% impact. Commit to vote cards, to me, are gold, because you can collect thousands of these if you're really working. Thousands of people who have signed their name to say, I will vote for Susie Greenberg, starting now. Then you take that little card, you have their address, you mail that card back to them, they get it right before early vote with a reminder, hey, early vote's about to start. You're like, oh, I forgot I signed this. I forgot I met this person. But it's just that little bit of a reminder and that affirmation you made way back that then you remind yourself of, that I think can actually make a difference in how people vote. It also helps us measure progress to goal. So if Susie is trying to earn, her vote goal is 12,000 votes. She thinks if she gets 12,000 votes, she wins. Imagine she collects 6 or 7 or 10,000 of these. You'll never get to 12,000. You'll never get to 10,000, to be honest. If you got above a few thousand, you're doing incredibly well. Again, these are hard earned. Like one canvassing packet, you maybe get 2 or 3 commit to vote cards. So it is 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. But if you get to thousands, you can say, I have 4,000 votes going in the bank going into election day. Again, this makes a big difference. So I mentioned that because it'll come up with canvassing as y'all get involved throughout the cycle. Other helpful actions, just to mention, amplifying the Democratic message online. Huge. Online persuasion is how people get the news these days. Canvassing, committing to vote, voter registration where it makes sense, but like at schools or in specific areas. Fundraising for candidates, or if you feel so moved, for the caucus and the leadership committee. And then many other things too, but truly, I've seen necessary trouble do this time and time again. Like candidates have a million things going on and so much noise and so much advice. And sometimes they just need like good people to be around and to help out whatever they need in that given day. And so I've seen y'all do that with Amani Barnes, for example, which is just awesome. So that is very helpful as well.
So Teddy, can we stop here? Because there are some questions that we wanted to add, some clarifying questions. Let's see, as I look in the chat, first of all, I had one question specifically. Did I understand you correctly to say that during the session, can people contribute to the caucus, whereas they can't contribute to candidates? Is that correct?
Yes. As part of that terrible campaign finance law, the leadership committees can collect contributions at any time, including session. I think this is sort of corrupt and a bad thing, but
it's a bad thing, but it gives us an opportunity to contribute more while session is going on. And the second question,
could I add, Karen?
go ahead.
I just wanted you all to know, to really understand what Teddy's talking about. It's the Georgia Blue Pack, right, Teddy? Yeah. So I started donating a lot to that this year because I trust them to then allocate my money most effectively to flip the Georgia House. And one thing I was concerned about, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I do donate, I love going to the events. And they assured me that I would still be able to go to all the events that I wanted to go to. So anyway, it's something to think about.
Okay, and another question, in terms of the postcards that you were just talking with us about, now are each of the candidates who are running going to have their own individual cards, or there won't be a card that will have several people on it, or how, can you talk a little bit more about how that is structured? So
yeah, happy to. It'll be important because honestly, especially in some of these races, like being a Democrat or a Republican isn't really the thing. So like committing to vote Democrat isn't the most effective, but committing to vote and investing in Susie means the world. So they will be candidate specific.
Okay, just
And,
as,
and the campaigns or us will end up printing them and getting them to the right places.
okay. Are there other questions? Allison just sort of reminded us that postcard stamp prices are going to be increasing on January 21st. So, you know, for those of us who are doing postcards, we probably get our stamps earlier. And are there other questions for Teddy?
Karen, I had a question that a few of us have kind of been wondering about. You know, ostensibly the redistricting should have improved situation for Democrats and for Black voters. And we also had a lot of had terrible disappointment. Does it feel like overall Black voters and Democrats are worse off or better off for the recent redistricting?
I would assert marginally better. I don't honestly buy that Black voters gained more equal representation under these new maps. Sort of the same amount of representation. It's like they played this little shell game, just moved around like which Black voters get represented. I mean, great, but like that's not net good. In the House, I think we pretty firmly picked up 1 or 2 seats, but we're going to have to really work, and our battleground's the same as where it started, with a couple incumbents and a much tougher spot.
Okay, Karen, you had a question? Yeah, Karen McGowan.
Yes. Teddy, when you say the goal is $5 million, is that for the Georgia Blue Pack? Does that count individual contributions to individual candidates? What does that $5 million figure represent?
Yeah, I skipped through the slide where I showed the breakout a little bit because it felt, I don't know, I got tired of talking about money. But it was 1.5 million candidate money and 3.5 million leadership committee. So last cycle, that 2.5 number I did was 1.7 million leadership committee and 750,000 candidate money on mail. So
when you say,
it's both.
oh, I'm sorry. And when you say leadership committee, is that the Georgia Blue Pack?
Correct, Georgia Blue Pack.
Okay, so are there any other questions? Teddy, thank you so much for joining us. And as you see in the chat, he has put the website for the GeorgiaHouseDems.com. And as you can see, there's a plan for us to bring strong leadership to our state government that will help all of us and move Georgia forward. I believe sometimes what people mean for ill, we can make good. And I think with necessary trouble behind this effort, we are definitely going to acquire some more Democratic seats at the State House and move Georgia forward for all of its citizens. Thank you so much, Teddy, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see y'all. I appreciate it.
Okay, and I am going to turn this back over to Becky at this time.
And I want to also give just a huge shout out of appreciation to Teddy and to the Georgia House Democratic Caucus. In the last couple of years with Leader Beverly and Teddy Smyth in the ED position, the House Democratic Caucus has never been as active, as engaged, as reaching out, as organizing, as powerful a force as they are now. It is so encouraging. So much gratitude to you, Teddy, and thanks for being such a great partner and leader. And that is a really good kind of background for what we're going to do next, because we're going to talk about affirming and choosing what candidates necessary trouble is going to be supporting in 2024. And for those who are new, and let me also say, if you've just joined in the last 15 or 20 minutes, a reminder, if you're new to Necessary Trouble, please put your name and address in your email address in the chat, and we will add you to our email list. A couple of things kind of undergirding our candidate choice, always in Necessary Trouble, which is even when there are really big races, and you don't get bigger than 2024 happening on the national level, we focus locally, because every time we get a Democratic voter to show up for a local, state, or county level election, they are going to vote up ballot. So we focus on, so when we're going to choose, of course we're going to vote. Of course we're going to work for Biden, right? Of course we're going to work for Biden. Of course we're going to work for Biden. And we're going to do that by also working for a couple of House district candidates. And the reason we focus on the House this year is because the state Senate is the state Senate, there are very few competitive races in the state Senate. There are very few competitive races for the congressional races. There are competitive races at the level of the state House. The state House is what we are working most actively to flip for Democrats. We will do it. We just want to do it a little bit sooner. So what we've done is your kind of elections team has selected a couple of candidates this year to present to the larger Necessary Trouble group. And we're going to present those to you for a vote today. We've selected two candidates. Those candidates, and these are candidates that Teddy just talked about, those candidates are Jasmine Clark to defend House District 108, and Susie Greenberg, House District 53, to flip. Those are the two candidates that we are presenting to you today. At the end of the following, and Aquaria Richardson Smyth is going to talk about Jasmine, and Pam Woodley is going to talk about Susie Greenberg. And at the end of those two presentations, you're going to have the option of, do we support Jasmine only? Do we support Susie only? Do we support both of them? Do we support neither of them? So this is a really important meeting. This is a really important vote. This will determine a lot of what we do this year. So on that note, I am going to share my screen, and Aquaria, can we turn this over to you, and would you talk to us about Representative Dr. Jasmine Clark?
Sure. Thank you so much, Becky. Good afternoon, everyone. So as I was preparing my thoughts as to why we should continue to support Dr. Jasmine Clark for House District 108, one of the things that just kept resonating with me was women's political power and representation in office. And as I just sat on that and began to research, I came across these statistics from the Center for American Women in Politics, which is kind of like the backdrop to the thoughts that I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. And I just want to drop this to you all. Of the 2,400, a little bit over 400 women that are serving as state legislators nationally in 2023, 5.2 of those state legislators identify as Black women. Now, according to the U.S. Census, Black women are 7.7% of the total U.S. population and 15.3% of the U.S. population of women. So why support our dear friend, Jasmine Clark, for House District 108, which for some who may not know covers Lilburn and the surrounding areas? As a dear friend of the Necessary Troublers, she has been a voice for the science and truth in the House of Reps, representatives on impact of guns, sex education, women's health, trans issues, and the environment. And because of the recent redistricting, her district, she has become the most vulnerable Democratic seat, second most vulnerable Democratic seat, meaning she has become now more red, that seat has. In her prior district, she fought off a strong challenger in 2020. Biden won in her area at 54.1%, and Stacey won by 150 votes. In her current district now, Biden won by 53.1%, and Stacey lost by 300 votes. Why is this important? You're asking yourself. To show you that Dr. Clark is a top target for Republicans in 2024. And as you can see, her district is very closely divided, which means everything is dependent on turnout. The passion, commitment, and dedication that Dr. Clark brings to the General Assembly, but more importantly, to the citizens that she represents in House District 108, is by far the same as she exudes as a mother to her two teenage kids, her graduating son of this year, and as well as her first year freshman daughter, excuse me, high school daughter. She's a professor at Emory's Nursing School, and she has a doctorate in microbiology and molecular genetics. And to think she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps by just becoming a doctor. Her gifts has given her space to use her voice nationally as one of the hosts of the podcast, The Suburban Women Problem, Red, Wine, and Blue with Rachel Vidman and Amanda Weinstein. Earlier, I highlighted the statistics to bring to your attention the representation gap of Black women in politics. We need to support Dr. Jasmine Clark, who has faced tremendous obstacles every term since her journey to the General Assembly in 2018. I want to leave this nugget with you. When Georgia's General Assembly looks like citizens of Georgia, we bring inclusion to the political process and policies to the majority and not the minority. Necessary troublers have fought to get Jasmine in the House in 2018. We fought to keep her there in 2020, and we need to fight for her again in 2024 because her impact is too grave to lose. Pat, I turn it over to you. I'm sorry, Pam.
Actually, you were right, Aquaria. It's Pat. Thank you, Aquaria, for presenting Jasmine. We love you, and we have been so grateful to the incredible work that Jasmine has done. It's been an amazing. We had also hoped that this would be the year we did not have to work for Jasmine. We had hoped that this would be the year that she would be safe, and subsequent to redistricting, her district is not safe. Pat, can we turn this over to you to talk about Susie Greenberg in House District 53?
Sure. I've had two chances to meet Susie Greenberg in Zoom calls and come away, and I'm talking about her today, with this real sense of how smart she is and how approachable she is and how she's really got a plan and is going to be moving forward because she has the personality, the connections in her community, and the plan to make all of this happen. If you can look at the key statistics from House District 53, when we started putting together these overheads, these slides, it was supposed to be the second most flippable district in Georgia. And all of a sudden, it has moved up to be the most flippable seat in Georgia and possibly the most flippable seat in the whole United States. So this is a really important place for us to put some of our time and energy. If you can see how the vote for Kelly Kaufman was, Kelly had 47% of the vote when she lost. I went and looked at the totals. Kelly lost by 1,496 votes. She lost by 1,500 votes. That's close. And so we have a better chance now of moving ahead with the second attempt to flip this really important seat. Her opponent is Deborah Silcox. When we say well-connected, her family has been in the Roswell area for a long time, so she knows a lot of people as well as knowing people around the state. She represented this area in 2017 to 2020, lost to Shay Roberts, then ran again and beat Kelly. But we know that that's an area that we have now become familiar with because we did so much canvassing for Kelly. And then we can look at Kelly's amazing person. She's, as it says here, she's already committed, she's focused, she's ready to go. She's already working on her campaign. She's an attorney, mother of 4, small business owner. She has worked as a volunteer working to help foster children. She's a leader in her synagogue. She's worked on the board of Planned Parenthood. She's been a volunteer as college counselor, and she's really active with Moms Demand Action. So you can see just for her areas of interest that she's working on a lot of the things that we really care about. So I'm excited about this campaign. I know that canvassing for this district is hard work. It's one of those long, narrow ones, big houses and long hills, but we can do this and we can help Susie get elected. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Aquaria. Let me also say, these are two candidates that have particular relationships with Necessary Trouble. Again, Jasmine Clark, we have had a relationship with for 3 cycles now, and one of the really impacting things for me so far about Susie Greenberg is some of you remember that Kelly Kaufman jumped into this race at the very last minute. She did it out of the goodness of her heart because we couldn't find anyone else to run, but she ran at the last minute with a lot of distractions, pregnancy. She was, anyway, there was a lot of difficulties. Susie Greenberg was bam out of the box a couple of months ago, and almost immediately what she did is start reaching out to Necessary Trouble, wanting us to support her very, very actively. So we've already had a couple of really pretty wonderful phone calls with Susie. She is all in. She has no distractions. She is in this to win it. She would love to have our support. So we're going to put this to you. Pat has created a poll, and Pat, will you let that poll bring it up? So you can see that if you would go ahead and vote, it is vote for a single choice, one of those, if you would. We're going to give it a minute, give everybody a chance to vote here. Thank you for participating. And I think we've got it. Pat, I'm looking at it, right? Pat, you're muted maybe?
Yes, where we are is 42 of the 42 people who voted for us to support both Jasmine and Susie.
Woo, 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 woo. Okay. Very nice. So 100% of the folks who voted, we are in for Jasmine Clark and Susie Greenberg. They are our 2 Necessary Trouble candidates for 2024. We are all in. Let me say a couple of things. One is that it is conceivable that we will offer to you another candidate that would be a county level candidate, that the election for whom would be in May. We're keeping an eye out for an appropriate candidate for that election. We won't know yet, but if that happens, we will bring it to you. And what we know for sure is that we are going to be supporting Jasmine Clark and Susie Greenberg, and that is very, 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 very exciting. I am looking just to make sure they're not, okay, I figure that somebody else is taking care of the chat. I'm going to share my screen again and talk a little bit about the work that we're going to be doing for these folks. A reminder that if you would, yeah, mute yourself. There we go. Okay, so let me say a little bit about the Troubler campaign work. What we have so far is we have some crucial areas of work and some folks who will be taking leadership in those areas, and I want to go over them. We have, and this was based on the hope and assumption that you would be approving both of these candidates. We were ready to do some fast reshuffling if you didn't. Pam Woodley is going to be our point of contact with Susie Greenberg. Pat Bird is going to be our point of contact with Jasmine Clark. We are going to be doing a ton of canvassing. Pam Woodley is going to be our canvassing lead for Susie. Tara Doyle is going to be our canvassing lead for Jasmine. Karen McCowan is going to be providing tech and admin support for canvassing. Amy Carpenter is going to be our lead for phone banking for both campaigns. We are currently recruiting for a planning team for a fundraiser for both candidates. If you feel drawn to that kind of work, please put your name in the chat with fundraiser in it, and I will get in touch with you. Sign placement and also the kind of rapid quick response work that we sometimes do for the DPG is going to be Lou Boos, and postcards is going to be led by Kate King. We had planned to do some recruiting, to start early and to get some recruiting going in all of these categories today. And what we ended up doing is we have an issue that has surfaced that we need to respond to very quickly. And so what we're going to do instead is we're going to do this recruiting at our next meeting. But if you see what you want to do, by God, put it in the chat and we will follow up with you. And the next meeting, we will start very actively recruiting for canvassers, for phone bankers, for super postcarders, for people willing to help with signs, for all of that. But I wanted to give particular appreciation for the people that are willing to step up and take leadership in these areas. Thank you beyond all measure, and more to come at the next meeting. I did want to, okay, and then there, I think I had mentioned, Karen Davenport, do you have your hand up?
I do. I just have one question. Since today is the last day before session that you can contribute to candidates,
Yes.
if people would like to contribute to Jasmine Clark or the other candidate, are we going to do
Yeah,
that as a
yes.
team, or would we do it individually, or what? That's
Will
what
you give,
some
let
direct.
me, if you would let me run that down this piece of call to action, and then I'll get to that one. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Beautiful. And I am not keeping an eye on the chat, so if anybody has questions that need to be answered right here, if you would raise your hand, that would be helpful. So this is the other area, election related, but not campaign related, that we need to do some recruiting today. Leslie High, who is heading up the voter protection necessary trouble work for this year, and Martha Laird, who is supporting her, and Pat and I met yesterday with somebody many of you know, Kim Allen, who has been very involved in voter protection with the DPG yesterday, and had a kind of a sobering conversation with her, and an inspiring one in some ways. She is the interim voter protection director at the DPG right now. What we talked about, what she said, is that this year is going to be a really very crucial year for voter protection efforts. It is a dicey year. It is expected that there will be disruptions at local sites. And it is also expected that there is lots of potential for local MAGA GOP folks to contest the election, right? It's a big year for voter protection. What the DPG voter protection team is planning is to create, at the risk of using a military analogy, an army of poll watchers at the precinct sites in all major counties. They are hoping to get that poll watching system in place for almost immediately for the March presidential primary election. The March presidential primary election, as some of you know, is a little bit of a non-event, right? We pretty much know who's going to be winning that primary for both parties. So that election itself is not a supercharged election. But what happens during that election will set the stage for May and for November. So if there are problems either with the electronic system, which there were some problems in the municipal elections, or if there are other issues in March, they will be massive, massive problems in May and November. So they want very much to get a system in place now of poll watchers. And they had a very specific request for necessary trouble. They are asking us to put together a team of 10 troublers to make phone calls, and they estimate the phone calls will take 5 or 6 hours for each team member, to people who have served as poll watchers in prior years and ask them if they are willing to serve again. All of this has to happen very quickly. The early voting for the March election begins February 19th. Volunteers need to be certified by February 10th. So this is a team that would be, they would be trained and supported, but the work would start soon and it would be done by the time early voting begins. So it doesn't conflict with anybody if you're planning to be a poll worker or a poll manager or be working during the election. But we very much need 10 people, need 10 troublers to make willing to be part of this team that would work with the Democratic Party of Georgia. It would be kind of convened and managed by Leslie High with support from Martha Laird. The work would be starting soon and it would be completed in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And what we would very much like is, if you are willing to do this, this is a team that we hope can be convened of people who either have a particular interest in voter protection or who have done phone banking before. And this phone banking is not so hard. You're calling people who are Democratic volunteers, right? Asking them if they would do something again they have done before. It's not scary, hard phone banking. It's the easiest phone banking that you can do. This is a team that we're hoping might be willing to do projects like this for voter protection in the future. So here's the pitch. This is the recruitment. This is a big recruitment pitch today. If you are willing to be part of this team, to make phone calls, to work on this voter protection over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's only 5 or 6 hours. If you would put your name in the chat right now with voter protection on it, it would be really great. And there is Pam Wishay, former poll watcher. I'd be happy to make calls to others. Thank you. Robin Shahar, yes. Poll watchers, and the answer is, in this case, the poll watchers will be reporting to the Democratic Party. Jane and RJ, thank you, thank you, thank you. Mary Lou, thank you. Lou Boos, thank you. Marcia, thank you very, very much. Jane Crane, Robert Brown, thank you very, very much. Viola, excellent, excellent, excellent. Margaret Heyman, Craig and Janet, voter protection, Carl Sex, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so very, very, very grateful to you. And if we can, any chance we can get a couple of more additions, if you are still willing, get a couple more folks that might be willing to do this. Think about anybody who has done phone calling in the past, phone banking in the past. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Okay, so we have a nice list here. We may do a little more recruiting. And we are very grateful, and we will do all of this is Viola, all of this is in Zoom. All the training is Zoom, and the phone calling is from home, and you will get lots and lots of support. So much, much gratitude, much, much gratitude. And if anybody is still thinking about it and hasn't jumped in, this would be a wonderful place to work. Voter protection is going to be crucial this year. Democracy depends on it. Okay, one last thing in terms of this piece, and I want to come back to finances, which Karen Davenport had mentioned. This is for people who are actively serving in the legislature. Today, before midnight, is the last day they can raise money for their candidacy until the legislative session is over. So for instance, Susie Greenberg will be able to raise money during the next couple of months. Jasmine Clark will not. So if you are willing and available to contribute to Jasmine Clark, you can go to her website and contribute before midnight tonight. That would be extremely helpful. After the legislative session, Necessary Trouble will be hosting a fundraiser for Susie Greenberg and Jasmine Clark together. But that won't be until after the fundraiser. So if you're willing to put some money into supporting Jasmine Clark before tomorrow, before midnight tonight is the way to do it. We also want to respond to a very specific request today. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you know that we have a particularly special relationship with Imani Barnes. And in part, that is because we helped her get elected. And in part because we really served as her campaign staff while we were getting her elected. And also, we have helped really her with her legislative work in many ways. Those of you who have seen her email update will recognize the work of Pat Bird in those email updates. And so we keep in very close relationship. Imani does not have an opponent right now. She does not have a challenger right now. One may emerge. She doesn't have one right now. What that means is that it makes it extremely difficult to raise any money. And even though she doesn't have a challenger, there are still financial responsibilities she has. She is responsible to pay the Georgia Democratic House Caucus $2,000, for instance, which she does not have on hand. So we are making a pitch today that if anybody can at all, Mary Lou, would you put Imani's link for fundraising in the chat, please? If there is any way that you can support Imani with even a small donation, we would be very, very grateful. It's really hard for legislators. They don't get paid anything. There are legislators who have really high-paying jobs. Imani does not. She is a single mom. She works really hard. She has done an incredible job as a legislator. She works her heart out. It is very difficult for her to raise money right now. If you can at all afford to pitch in and help Imani, just meet these minimal requirements, and that has to be done before midnight tonight. So if you even just go to the site right now, you can migrate, it won't take you away from the Zoom, and you can come back. So much gratitude to all of you who are able and willing to do that. And thank you to all of you again who have signed up to support the voter protection effort. And thank you for voting. And thank you to all the election team who signed up to take leadership, and to Aquaria and Pat for presenting our candidates, and so much appreciation and gratitude for Necessary Trouble. And I'm going to turn this now over to PJ.
Thank you so much, Becky. Everyone, I want to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Smyth, and our travelers, Aquaria and Pat and Becky and Karen Davenport. You all have given us a lot of information this afternoon, and it's really been great. We've got a lot of work to do. At this time, I would like to open the session on our work group for updates and upcoming events. And do we have the slide? Right, okay, all right. So I would like to ask us to go in the order of the slides, which means that Robin Shahar will.
PG, I think you just muted yourself.
Just muted yourself.
Hey, y'all.
So you didn't hear anything I said? Nobody? Okay.
Yes,
that's
we
okay.
did. It was just the very end. It was just the very end, PJ.
Oh, okay, okay, great. Then Robin?
Hello.
Okay, hey, darling. Hi.
Hello. Is it possible to take off the yeah, that thing right there? Thank you. Hi, everybody. I've got to pull up my notes here. So I'm talking to you all today about a criminal justice reform project that Necessary Trouble is getting involved with in partnership with Beit Havarim's Ending Mass Incarceration Committee. And I've started this along with a few others in Necessary Trouble. It's very rewarding. We are working with DeKalb County's juvenile court. It's a youth diversion program. And essentially youth between ages 10 and 16, ages are kind of heartbreaking, who are accused of a crime, will be diverted into this first offender program. And if they complete it successfully, which they almost all do, the criminal charge will be dropped and their record will be cleaned, and the percentage of those kids getting in trouble again is very, very low. So what does this entail? Basically, the programs for these kids last for about 90 days, and they start with a hearing. And so what you are is you are a volunteer hearing officer. The hearings have 2 to 3 officers at a time, and the kids come in with a guardian or parent. We listen to what went on, and then we establish a program for them to follow for no more than 90 days. The program involves things that are tailored to what the kids have done. So it might be research on whatever action they took and how that might impact others. It could be apology letters. It could be there are educational programs that DeKalb puts on for kids dealing with anger management, drugs and alcohol. In addition, the hearing officers act as essentially almost like social workers. So every week after the hearing, the youth has to contact the hearing officer and speak with them, give them an update about how they're doing. And the hearing officer essentially listens, makes sure they're following the program, can offer guidance. The hearing officer may also be speaking with the parent or guardian about how they're doing and what's happening with the kid. And basically you are providing support to that family so that at the end of the program, the chance of this person getting into trouble again is dramatically reduced. It's essentially approximately 1 or 2 hearings a month. The hearings are in the evening, and a hearing can have 1 or 2 cases in front of it. And then of course you would take on 1 or 2 kids to be their supervisor. So it's, I mean, it's a time commitment, a little, some time commitment, but you have to follow through because there are kids and parents who are relying on you. You have to be a DeKalb County resident. You'll have to have a background check, and there's a training, like 2 evening trainings for about a couple hours each. Ms. Charmaine Brown is the head of the program, and she's wonderful. And I said to her, I'm going to talk to this group. Are there things that you want me to be sure to express? And she said, let people know this is not for the faint of heart. Some of the circumstances that you hear about are heartbreaking, and you have to really focus on the offense and what this kid needs in this situation to address it, and hopefully help them not reoffend, but stay in your brain, essentially, not get caught up in your heart. She also said, her words, I need volunteers that can look beyond color, socioeconomic status, and be non-judgmental. And I think people in this group are committed to that. So, but I just want to let you know that's what she said. Speaking for myself, I think I think there's a real need for BIPOC volunteers. And so if you know of potential BIPOC volunteers, please have them get in touch with me. I mean, I think it's really important for kids who are racial minorities to not be sitting with hearing officers who are all white. So, which isn't to say if you're white you shouldn't volunteer, but if you know folks of color and who you think would be good and interested, please have them get in touch with me. Any questions? Okay. If you're interested, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Please email me and I will follow up with you and can answer questions and then connect you with Ms. Brown at the court. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Robin. Aquaria, you want to talk to us about the book club?
Hi, how are you all doing again? We are so excited. We're going to be in person. So yes, it's our inaugural Necessary Travelers Book Club, and we're reading Michelle Obama's, can you see it? Well, maybe not. Not a good thing. The Light We Carry. Let me get my notes up here. So sorry. And with that, the date is January 21st from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So we wanted to make sure that you all are aware that the date and time, 21st on a Sunday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. The location is the Eagle Eye Book Shop, which is located at 2076 North Decatur Road in Decatur at the corner of Claremont and North Decatur. It's the same lot as the FedEx office store. You can Google it. I'm sure we'll have information going out about that. But more importantly, with the subtitle, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. And as travelers, as we have been throughout this journey over the years, as you know that we care deeply about our democracy, the human rights, our planet, and a host of other issues. In today's political environment, it's so easy to feel discouraged or even burnt out. And so how can we discover the strength in that? How can we discover strength and community inside our differences? What tools do we have to use to address these feelings, these self-doubt, sometimes of even feeling, a sense of helplessness or even hopeless? What do we do when it all starts to feel like it's too much? How do we push forward? Well, in this latest book, Michelle offers some tools that we can pull out of our toolkit to help us through her own experiences and life's lesson. We're going to gather, as I mentioned, at the Eagle Eye Book Shop in their private room in the back of the store, and they're giving us a 10% discount. So if you order from the Eagle Eye Book Shop. I think Robin should be putting something in the chat about that, where if you decide to order from the bookstore, you get a 10% discount. So we're glad for that. So want to definitely give our support to the bookstore. We will have light snacks for coming out to joining us. And even if you have not read the book, no pressure. It is going to be an easy topic, easy thing. We just want to come together and just fellowship with one another. And at the end of the discussion, guess what? We're going to plan our next book and meeting time. So let us know that you're coming. If you think you want to attend, please put your name in the chat as well as your email so that we can keep count. And even if you haven't done so yet, it's okay. Just come on through, but we want to be able to just get a count of how many people are coming out. We look forward to seeing you all in just 2 weeks. Thanks so much. Back to you, PJ.
All right, thank you so much, Aquaria. Now, Pam Woodley, would you give us an update on the Fighting 50?
There.
Pam?
Okay, yes. Yeah, the Fighting 50 is, what we're doing is recruiting Democrats to run for Georgia House in the red districts. So not the super important districts that Teddy Smith was talking about, but these are districts where Biden got less than 40% of the vote, and typically no Democrat even runs. The Republican just runs over and over and over without ever a challenge. So our goal is to recruit Democrats to eventually, hopefully we'll get to the point where a Democrat is running in almost all of these districts. Next slide. And so, yeah, so, when we talk to these potential candidates, we do tell them right away, we don't expect you to win, barring a miracle, you're not going to win because voting tends to change, not by much more than a few points a year. However, the good news for that is you don't have to put your whole life on hold and raise $100,000. We're talking about low-key races. We just want decent people, good people respected in the community on the ballot as Democrats, because when people in a red area who feel lonely as a Democrat, when they see a Democrat on the ballot, it increases their turnout for the top ticket races by 1.5 points, which is huge for our state level races, increases their morale and community. It encourages them to run for other seats such as school board, city council. And it just makes the Republican, defend their views versus ours. Next slide. So our process is we get contact data on strong Democrats from the Democratic Party of Georgia and from this organization called Contest Every Race. We send out mass texts, say, are you interested in learning more about running for office as a Democrat? And then we follow up with all the responders. And the Peach Power PAC, or RepGA, provides training and minor funding. So we are in the process right now to get some candidates on the books, before qualifying in the first week of March. And the troublers working on this with us are Bob Herndon and Marion Myers and Pat Bird. And we would love to have additional volunteers if that sounds interesting to all of you, any of you.
Thank you, Pam. Now, Karen, would you give us an update with the DeKalb Dems, please?
Yes, PJ, if I could share my screen, that would be helpful. Oh, thank you. Let's see if I could do this quickly. So the DeKalb Dems, as we begin 2024, our focus is on clear messaging as we begin 2024. And as we are doing that, one of the projects that I wanted to share with the Necessary Troublers is what we are doing during the month of January, particularly. First of all, there's some important information I wanted to share just for January. Number one, the Democratic Party of Georgia has a strategic plan, which Teddy mentioned. If those of you who haven't met the new executive director, I wanted to share a little bit about that today. And then we have a voting rights letter writing project that, if you get up early in the morning and can't sleep, we've got some information that you could easily write to every legislator in Georgia, because they are working to take away our voting rights even more. We've found out that the more letters that legislators get and the more information is on social media, it can definitely show that people know what's going on and apply pressure. So the information that has come from the State Democratic Party, there's a prospectus that has been put together. I will send that document to Pat so that she could share the whole document with everyone who's online. These are some key points that are made in that document. Of course, talking about what we have accomplished in 2020 and 2022, what's at stake specifically in getting Joe Biden back in the White House, helping to take back federal Congress, and supporting our DeKalb state legislators. And then in DeKalb, working to cause Democratic electorate through voter engagement, protecting voters' voices, and working in close connection with the state Democratic Party. We truly believe that messaging has to be different for different people. So that's the main thing that we are working on. This one element that I'd like to share with you today has to do with voting rights. As you know, the session will start on Monday, and voting rights will be at the forefront. While Democrats will be focusing on the truth, Republicans are constantly focusing on the lie. As outlined in the AJC, they are really kind of trying to circulate even more things that take away our rights to vote, such as allowing the state election board to investigate the Secretary of State, ending no excuse absentee voting, tightening ballot handling procedures. So we have to step up to help our Democratic legislators fight against all of the terrible things that they are having to deal with. What I'm including, and Pat will hopefully include this, there's some key information that people may not know that the Biden-Harris administration has put in place in terms of their executive orders, which is a position paper on what they particularly feel we need to be doing as a country in relation to voting. So there's some information I'm sharing that's specifically partisan. If you're going to respond to any of these polls or anything online, this will give you some concrete information related to that. This is outlining some things specifically that Brian Kemp and the Republican legislature has done. Again, you can use this information as background information in replying to things that you see online, or if you choose to write a letter to the legislators. And this is written in a nonpartisan format. So again, the efforts that we would appreciate necessary troublers taking part in, particularly this month, is to let people know that we do not want more restrictions on our voting rights. We have not forgotten about SB 202, and we need for this to change to support democracy. Thank you, PJ.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. Michael, would you now give us an update for the environment, please?
Yes, absolutely. I hope everybody can hear me. So I'll just give an update kind of where we are on protecting the Okefenokee, which is our main focus right now, and working on this with James Seward. Two features of this. One is there's a risky mining proposal with the Environmental Protection Division to mine now. That is still in play. We've not heard back from EPD. They have over 100,000 comments. There is still no decision, even though it's January 2024. Where we focus most of our effort is getting the House Bill 71, which is essentially protecting the Okefenokee from future mining permits. It won't deal with the current permit, but any future mining would be stopped within a specific area to the east of Okefenokee Swamp. And for those of you who don't know about this mining, essentially it's dredge mining along this area, right almost up to the border of the swamp. Threatens to undo basically what was an ancient barrier island that serves as a dam on the east side of the Okefenokee, which is actually higher and could potentially drain the swamp. And so, I mean, it's catastrophic consequences if this goes wrong. And there's lots of experts that say this is really, really risky. And so HB 71 was introduced last legislative session. It went to the Natural Resources and Environment Committee and it stalled there. It never came out of committee for a vote. Really the biggest thing here is that it's an impressive 95 people have signed on to this, which means it would pass if it got out of committee and could get a vote. It's truly bipartisan. It was actually submitted by Republicans initially. And so we're trying to work on a variety of different areas. One is really focusing with the Georgia Water Coalition, which we necessary trouble joined so that we could be on their Okefenokee subcommittee. We held what we called Conservation Homecoming Week for the Okefenokee, the end of October, beginning of November, to try and get volunteers across the state to have meetings with their legislatures in their home district and just say, we need you to get behind this House bill. I'd say it was somewhat successful. It was a lot of work. And I think the take-home message was that for your regular day-to-day citizen calling up their legislator, it is hard to get any response. And so we were at about 10% of people were able to actually get a meeting with their legislator and talk to them about it. And some of those were very good and some good feedback, but not I was kind of dismayed by such low assistance from the people who serve us. And so I'm not sure that will happen again, but I think it was worth trying. And we did get some good intel from different Republicans that helped us think about where we're going next. The big thing is, from a Republican standpoint, is don't take away somebody's property rights. This is one person who owns the land that would be sold to this mining company, and we're forgetting about the 150 other property owners that are mostly timberland producers, that essentially things burn down when fires come out of the Okefenokee. So we're trying to get them to look at all property, private property rights and how we do that. The committee's bought a list of the property owners, and we're going to be contacting those folks to see what do they think about it, and can we mobilize them in some way to kind of talk to their legislators and so on. Resolutions have now been passed in communities around the swamp, except for where this one district is, but Waycross, Ware County, Brunswick, Homeland have all passed resolutions in support of protecting the swamp. It has about $60–70 million worth of economic benefit to the community because so many people come to visit. DeKalb County actually just passed a support statement, which was great, and so is Brookhaven. So I think those numbers are climbing. We've had a petition signature going down in the local area that has gotten hundreds of signatures in support of this. And then we're planning on a press briefing coming up with people from the local area talking about what this means to them and everything. One of the big things that's been recommended to us by talking to some of our legislators is write John Burns, our relatively new Speaker of the House, to talk about how this is a bipartisan issue, 95 signatures, and ask for his help to get this out of committee. It would pass if it could get out of the committee. And so we need him to see this as an issue that's important and that people are writing about, so that we can potentially get him to help on this. And I'll send a mock letter that to Pat to put in the summary here that you can use, modify as you wish, to try and send to Speaker Burns. If you're really feeling good about that, there'll also be a link in there that the Natural Resources and Environmental Committee, send a letter to them and say how much you'd like to see this come out of committee. Lynn Smyth is a longtime chair of this committee and not particularly favorable to environmental issues ever emerging from the committee once they go in. So thanks. Any questions and I'll answer, but I think I'm feeling good. But keep writing letters, as we said before, letting the governor know, John Burns, any of these committee members. I think we've been hearing that they do listen when these letters come in, especially ones that are sent, so they're hard copies and that, versus compared to phone texts and that sort of thing. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Michael. At this time, everyone, I want to say thank you to Robin and Aquaria and Pam and Karen and Michael for their updates. I want to thank our guest, Mr. Smith, and all the other troublers, Becky, for all the information that you supplied today. This has been a wonderful meeting. We have so much to do in 2024, and it sounds like we're off to a really, really good start. I want to let everybody know that our next meeting for the troublers will be February the 11th at 4 p.m. And for those of you who did not attend the last in November, our meeting in November, at this time, I'm going to conclude the meeting, but I want to invite everyone who did not see the 2023 video of the troublers at work, if you would take the time now to enjoy the video, and I will see you all in February. Let's see who's going to take that for me. Becky.
I'm going to
You'll
do
take
it.
that?
Yes, if all the gods are willing, this will work. So let's just give it a try here.
As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill lofts gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our life shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead, go crying through our singing their ancient call for bread, small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too.
PJ,
All
haven't
right.
we done a lot of good work together?
We have
all of
done
us.
a lot of work. Yes, yes, yes. That was so nice. Okay. Thank you, Becky. Thank you. All right, everybody. Again, Happy New Year, and let's go to work. We'll see you next month. Bye-bye.